why do I think there's an excellent chance that the Democrats are going to win? And it's going to be a real disaster. It's going to be a disaster either way, because we're on the cusp of a civil war. Not like the unpleasantness of 1861 to 1865, but something different. And I'll give you another moral argument. It's that if that debt's going to be paid off, it's not going to be baby boomers like myself that are going to pay it off. It's going to be the young people of the country that will pay it off, who will be turned into indentured servants. They'll be turned into serfs to pay off this gigantic debt, which is growing like topsy every single day. So if you have any regard for your children and grandchildren, you should punish the people that have been financing the government and not punish the next generations who will have to pay off these things.
Hey guys, you're watching Capital Cosm. My name is Danny, and today's guest is the one and only Doug Casey. Doug, thank you so much for coming on again.
It's nice to be here with you, Danny, although here, in my case, is Buenos Aires at the moment. I just got in from a month in the mysterious Orient, and I'm glad to be back home. And I guess I consider Buenos Aires to be home as much as any other place. But anyway, I've come to hate traveling, generally speaking. So that's a tangent. Anyway,
yeah,
nice
traveling is quite a drag nowadays, especially having to interact, especially if you're traveling publicly. That is.
Oh God, listen, I used to fly, and actually kind of enjoy flying back in the days when there was no security, and as long as you had a ticket in your hand and you ran to the jetway before they closed it, that was it.
I remember. Yep.
You were in good shape, but it's not that way anymore. It's getting to the airport 2 hours before and going through numerous lines and controls. And anyway, I've been to over 155. I'm not sure what the number is, but something like that. Countries, most of them several times, some of them many times. Lived in 10 countries for quite a while in each one of them. And after a while, you figure, I've been there, I've done that, I've seen everything that I really want to see, although things are changing constantly. So it's like a kaleidoscope. But, at a certain point, you really like sleeping in your own bed. And anyway, here I am in Buenos Aires. I'm very pleased about it. Although I've got to say, it was a pleasure being in the Orient because it is the future. It absolutely is. The future is not in North America or South America, and absolutely not in Europe. It's in the Orient, Southeast Asia, more than anything else.
Yeah, I haven't been back there in quite a few years. I had a trip down to China back in 2019, and I mean, it just blows away everything that we have here in the United States and in the West. The infrastructure is nice. It's all efficiently managed. Say what you will about the government there, but that being held constant, they do have a tightened up society.
Yeah, it's true, and it's everything works. Quite frankly, costs are low, much lower than they are here, and everything works. The quality of the hotels I stayed at was head and shoulders above almost anything that we have in the U.S. And flying on the airlines I was, some on Malaysian, but mostly on Qatar and Emirates, which are unquestionably the two best airlines in the world. And not just by a little bit, by an order of magnitude. The stewardesses are all young and good-looking and extremely well-trained at their jobs, whereas all the stewardesses, I shouldn't say stewardesses, female flight attendants, I guess is what we call them now, in the U.S., are basically in my mother's age. Except the thing is, when my mother was a stew on United during World War II, it was something that a young, pretty, single, talented woman would do for a couple of years to see a bit of the world and maybe meet some businessman who was in a position to fly, which was unusual in those days. But now all the stewardesses and all the US airlines, they're basically flying waitresses, devoid of talents, and they're all the age of my mother, quite frankly. Well, almost. So it's part of the general degradation of US society and business. Generally, I've got to say that as time goes on, I become more and more pessimistic about what the future looks like for the West in general and the US in particular.
Yeah, let's focus in on that. When it comes to the West and the United States, what's top of mind for you right now? What's occupying your headspace?
Well, I guess it's on everybody's mind, but in about a week, we're going to have an election, kind of. And here's what amazes me. It's that approximately half the country is going to vote for the Democrats. And I find that very disturbing. In the past, if you voted for a Democrat or a Republican, well, there used to be, you could say it was kind of a uniparty where the Republicans talked about free markets, but they didn't do anything about it. I mean, they're better than the Democrats. And the Democrats talked about social freedom, but that was a lie too, but at least that was their line. But at this point, we're actually descending into a police state in the US where we're getting both warfare and welfare from both sides of the political equation. But the Democrats have actually become the new Jacobins. I mean, I think the best comparison to them is the people that took over France after the revolution. They share the same philosophy, they share the same psychological attitudes as people like Robespierre did in those days. They're very, very dangerous. They're authoritarians. They're even totalitarians when you scratch them under the surface. So it's not that I support the Republicans. It's just that they're less dangerous than the Democrats are. I could make an excellent case, and I have for years, of course, that you shouldn't vote because it just feeds power to one or the other. Anyway, no, it's rare anybody votes for anybody. You're trying to choose the lesser of two evils. And unfortunately, the lesser of two evils is still evil. So rather than engage in that contest, a good argument can be made from a moral point of view, just to opt out, quite frankly.
Yeah, because there's consequences that are unseen when it comes to either one of these parties having power. Because if you think about it this way, the right wing actually grew in power during the Biden presidency, and the left wing grew in power during the Trump presidency because it's a reaction to establishment power. And revolution doesn't build in the mind of man arbitrarily; it builds as a reaction to something. So a Trump presidency may actually embolden the left, and a Harris presidency may actually continue strengthening the right. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff, it is completely, it's very complex and on the road that it leads to, on what road we end up in.
That is a very well-made point. Yes, it is. But at this point, the Democrats, for the reasons I just described, are actually actively dangerous. The Republicans, they tend to be rural, they tend to be conservative, they tend to maintain traditional values much more than the Democrats, who actually want to overturn the whole nature of society. Many of them do anyway. So I'm not going to vote But at this point, anyway, I'm not sure voting makes any difference because I read the predictions and the polls about what's going to happen. And it was, well, Kamala looks like she's going to win, and then Trump. And now it kind of looks, from what I read, because what do I know? I'm here in Buenos Aires, uh, that that Trump is going to win the popular vote. That makes sense to me. But that doesn't mean he's going to be installed as a president. And why do I say that? It's because historically, the Democrats have been much more effective at rigging the deal and stealing the election than the Republicans have. At least during my lifetime, it started with Mayor Daley in Chicago in the 1960 election when, due to some vote rigging by Daley, Kennedy won as opposed to Nixon. But there have been a lot of things since then, going back to the contest between the baby Bush and Al Gore, where it came down to a hanging Chad.
Yeah.
And baby Bush won partially courtesy of his brother, who was the governor of the state of Florida. That's the kind of stuff that you're used to seeing go on in South America. But why do I think there's an excellent chance that the Democrats are going to win? And it's going to be a real disaster. It's going to be a disaster either way, because we're on the cusp of a civil war. Not like the unpleasantness of 1861 to 1865, but something different, but still very nasty. The Democrats have encouraged many millions. Nobody knows what the exact number is. There's all kinds of speculation on what the numbers are. Take your choice, 5, 10 million. Some people say 20 million illegals have crossed the border during the Biden administration. And the main reason, it seems to me, there are other reasons too, that they're here is because they can see, because they're getting free food, free shelter, free money. So, of course, they're going to prefer the Democrats. And the Democrats are making an active effort to get these people to pretend they're American citizens and vote. That alone is enough to swing the election. When these poll watchers say, well, Trump is winning right now. Yeah, maybe he is. I think he is among the average American. But the average American is not going to swing this election. You've got 20 million illegal residents that know which side their bread is buttered on, and they're going to vote Democratic. So that's one reason why Kamala, I'm pronouncing it in the Spanish manner, incidentally, and get back to that in a moment, will be installed. Another reason is mail-in ballots. If a ballot is mailed in, you really don't know who the warm body that's representing something on paper with an address, which could be anything, who it is. And I have no doubt that the Democrats in particular are going to send in millions of these mail-in ballots, especially to so-called swing states. So those are two important things, two very important things. So Trump should win if the Vox Populi was observed, but because of migrants voting and mail-in ballots, which I think are going to be used in a massive way, and other things or something like that. But the Jacobins who are in power now don't want to give up power. They will do anything to stay in power for lots of reasons. So I'm betting, unfortunately, that the bad guys, which is to say Kamala, and let me explain that. I'm in Argentina right now. We speak Spanish down here. And you'll recall that at the convention, her stepdaughter made a big deal out of the correct way to pronounce her name. Okay. So we were taking lessons from this young girl about how to pronounce Kamala's name. But since we have so many Spanish speakers in the US now, there are actually three ways to pronounce Kamala, if that's how she pronounced it, in Spanish. One is Quemala, spelled Quemala. Quemala. That means how bad, which is kind of appropriate. Or you can pronounce it Quemala. Quema is one word, Quema, and then la, the female. That means burn her. That's not good either. And then the last one is Kamala, Camala. That means bed her. So, it's kind of inauspicious when you've got all these Spanish voters that might just mispronounce her name in any of those three Spanish variations, which are all essentially cognates for the Indian word Kamala. I don't know what it means in Hindi. Anyway, I just think that's an interesting observation that I thought I'd make. I wind up saying, instead of Kamala, I wind up saying Kamala most of the time, just reflexively.
Yeah. So don't you think it's a little strange this time around that the media, the entire apparatus seems to be very lackadaisical when resisting Trump versus 16 and 20? There was a lot more hostility back then. There doesn't appear to be any sense of urgency this time around. It's as if they've kind of resigned themselves to a conclusion there. And Trump's been able to mount quite a coalition. Be they what they are, portions of Silicon Valley, Wall Street, various other big money groups. So we may end up getting Kamala. We also may end up getting Trump. But the question is, if we do get Trump, will it be the same Trump from 16 and 20, or will it be a more watered down Trump having to appease his new allies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am not a fan of Trump. I wrote an article in 2012 when he first kind of blossomed upon the political scene. And in that article, I put my finger on the fact that Trump, big problem with Trump is he has absolutely no philosophical core. He's really an opportunist that knows very little about economics. Yes, he's a businessman, so he has some common sense about trying to keep costs down and this type of thing. But he has no philosophical core at all. So he's capable of just about anything. That's the bad news about Trump. In addition to some really stupid economic ideas that he has. I mean, in terms of percentage of the budget, he was a bigger spender than Joe Biden was. I mean, most people don't recognize that. I mean, he really was spending like a drunk sailor insofar as the president can influence the budget. He was terrible. He believes in all kinds of state intervention, as long as it's intelligent intervention, which is the kind that he likes for whatever reason. So, yes, he did some good things. Trying to deregulate, excellent idea. Trying to reduce taxes, excellent idea. But it's impossible to reduce taxes unless you reduce spending. Because if the government doesn't take it out of its subjects' hides with direct taxes, it will take it out indirectly through currency debasement. So there is no such thing as a tax cut unless there's a massive spending cut. And nobody seems to understand that. Nobody seems to have any interest in talking about the $36 trillion national debt, where the interest that the government is paying now is more than the so-called defense budget. And of course, that word defense is inappropriate when we're talking about what the military is doing these days. So this is a complete disaster, no matter who wins. Trump will be, but why do I prefer Trump? I guess that's what I'm leading up to with all these negative things about him. It's that he is a cultural conservative. In other words, he doesn't want to overturn the basis of American society. He wants to keep the basic culture where it is, which is great because American culture is what made this country different and greater than any others. I'm of that opinion. He doesn't want to change that. Kamala does, and all the Jacobins that are gathered around her. So I support Trump because he's a cultural conservative, regardless of all the other stupid ideas that he's going to foist upon us. But he'll be better than Kamala.
Have you gotten a chance to see his proposal for replacing the income tax effectively with tariffs? Did you see that comment from him the other day?
Yes, I've heard about it. I haven't read the proposal. Is there an actual proposal where he's...
No, he just said it offhand, actually.
That's what I thought it was too. Well, look, almost anything to get rid of the income tax. And few Americans are aware of the fact that for most of this country's history during the 19th century, the federal government lived on import duties and excise taxes. That was it. The whole federal government was financed on those two things. And anything that can be done to abolish the IRS, pull it out by the roots and sow Agent Orange where it came from. Just the opposite of what's happened under Biden, where they tried to hire 80,000 more of these bed bugs that work for the IRS. Yes. Would it work just to... the problem is the U.S. is a gigantic importing nation. I'm telling you, yes, the idea of abolishing the IRS, wonderful idea. It would help the country recover and boom in many, many ways. Great. But financing it with import duties, the U.S. is by far the world's largest importer. And we don't pay for those imports with exports. In fact, the largest single exporting entity in the U.S. used to be Boeing. I guess it maybe still is, despite the fact it's collapsing. And if you can't import these hundreds of billions of dollars from foreigners, they can't afford to buy your stuff either. And in today's world, nobody wants to accept the dollar anymore, which is our major export, actually. It's dollars. It's not soybeans or Boeings, it's dollars. And people accept it because they're used to paying with dollars. Everybody uses the dollar. So the answer to the question is, if he actually tries to do that, he could collapse the world economy because trade would collapse. But look, the only solution to the problem is not by substituting something else for the income tax. It's by radically cutting government expenditures. By radically, what do I mean? I mean wholesale abolition of most or almost all of the government agencies in Washington. Just abolish them and let the people that are employed by them, I hesitate to say work for them, let them find some new way to put bread on the table. Abolish welfare, abolish all these things. The government, since it's a vehicle of pure force, that's what Mao Tse-tung said, comes out of the barrel of a gun, should do nothing but protect you from force. That means a night watchman military, not enough to go out and look for wars abroad, a police force, and a court system to adjudicate disputes without resorting to force. That's it. So that's where you want to go. And that will solve the problem.
How would you finance the debt in that kind of scenario?
Well, yeah, let me say something really radical. I don't think that debt can ever be paid off. It is actually impossible at this point. So what should you do with the debt? Hey, I've got an idea. How about defaulting on it? Because, and I can give you several reasons why actually I think that's a good idea. For one thing, the people that have been buying the debt, the banks, the pension funds, all these things, they have in effect been making the stupid things, the destructive things the U.S. government does possible by financing them. They should be punished for that, as should individuals that have been financing an evil institution. So from a moral point of view, I think that's great. And I'll give you another moral argument. It's that if that debt's going to be paid off, it's not going to be baby boomers like myself that are going to pay it off. It's going to be the young people of the country that will pay it off, who will be turned into indentured servants. They'll be turned into serfs to pay off this gigantic debt, which is growing like topsy every single day. So if you have any regard for your children and grandchildren, you should punish the people that have been financing the government and not punish the next generations who will have to pay off these things. So yeah, that's the other thing I do. I would default out.
And plus, on a relative basis,
for a while, sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hey guys, quick pause. I won't take too much of your time, but if you're looking to add into your gold and silver stack, please consider Miles Franklin. More specifically, email them, info@milesfranklin.com, and tell them that Capital Cosmos sent you in the subject line to unlock special pricing that you won't find on the website. In the unlikely event that you don't like the prices, you could always not buy. There's no commitment necessary, but I do recommend Miles Franklin for a number of reasons. The customer support is top notch, the prices are great, and I know the people there. Great people all around. So with all that said, let's get back to the video. Thanks,
I was going to say, on a relative basis, I mean, we're not any worse off than anyone else around the world. They're all going to have to default or print their way out of it regardless.
You're right. We're going to see massive debt defaults on the part of all these damn governments. And that gets us to something else. How do you preserve your wealth? Well, you sure don't want to own dollars or euros or yen or any of that. And these are all just fiat paper currencies that have no intrinsic value whatsoever.
You say this as the 10 years ripping higher, close to 4.3% now.
I'll make a prediction. It's that in the next 5 years, long-term interest rates, which the Fed can't really control, they can control short-term interest rates a number of ways. But long-term interest rates are a function of the market and whether people want to hold paper, which only promises to pay you in 10 years or maybe 30 years. Interest rates are headed back towards the levels they were in the early 1980s. Most people are just unaware of the fact that in the early 80s, the US government was paying 15, 16, even 17% for money, which sounds unbelievable now. But it's going to go back to those levels.
Yeah,
and that's going to be chaos.
Yeah,
I mean, just choose the form of chaos that you'd like, and the form of chaos which is inevitable at this point, because actions have consequences. Cause has effect. You jump off a 100-story building, unless magic happens, you're going to hit the ground. So I choose that way, that kind of chaos, because it would destroy the power of the U.S. government. If you do anything else, it's just going to cement it and make it more powerful.
Would anyone try to take advantage of that vacuum, though?
Well, anybody. Who might that be that you're referring to?
Like on a sovereign scale?
Some foreign country?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been true for a very long time. The U.S. is essentially uninvadable. I mean, is China going to mount a trans-Pacific invasion? I don't think so. Russia is incapable and totally uninterested in invading. Who else is going to invade? Well, I'll tell you who's invading. The undocumented aliens, who are very different from people that came to this country in the 19th century and early first half of the 20th century. These people were all Europeans. They shared roughly the same religion, the same race, the same language group, the same culture, generally kind of the same habits. That's all good. But most important is they paid their own way. I mean, you landed in Ellis Island, and most of these people from Europe were penniless, penniless. But they made their own way. There was no government to give them free food, shelter, and walking around money, which is what we do with these people. And the difference is you got the best people who were seeking opportunity in those days. Now you're getting the worst people who are looking for a free ride and know they're going to get it. So we're actually being invaded that way very effectively. Now it's a disaster. And of course, Trump says he's going to massively deport all these people. Well, that's going to be hard to do for lots
It's
of
gonna be very
reasons.
messy too. Like easier
Very
said than
messy.
done.
Very messy. I mean, yeah, these people have no right to be here. Well, the first thing you can do is cut off all their benefits. Second thing you can do is cut off all welfare benefits, period. Welfare benefits of whatever type are the most destructive and corrupting possible thing you can do to a society. They shouldn't be cut back. They should be abolished, period. That'll solve a lot of the problem. A lot of these people will go home when there's no free ride. And otherwise, if you're here and you don't belong here, you're violating the law, we'll send you home. And what if you don't know where their home is because they burned their passports or whatever, can't be determined? Well, I don't know. That's a problem that has to be solved, but it should be solved because legitimate immigrants to the US, and this is crazy too, have to spend many thousands of dollars for legal bills and God knows what to get their green cards. It doesn't seem right, and pay their own way. Meanwhile, these people that are crossing the border, most of whom are actually indigent, and they're not, Trump is right about this. They're not the best and the brightest. Yeah, they should go home. It's like what they say in bars at closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That's the key. You can't stay here. I mean, I really don't care where you go. That's somebody else's problem. That's the problems of the Central American governments that have let them walk through the country knowing where they're going to go. Let them go back there. Sorry, your problem.
Doug, let's go ahead and segue over to some of the things that happened last week at this BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. They unveiled what appears to be their banknote. Putin did.
Yeah.
Russia did. And it seems to be taken seriously. Not too long ago, we had a leak out that they were anticipating about a 40% backing of gold on this settlement currency. Last week, we got a reveal of this banknote. So someone actually put in the work of designing a banknote and showcasing it around. And it does look like it's happening soon. What does this mean for the Western sphere? What does this mean for the dollar?
Well, it means that the dollar, which is increasingly a hot potato, because everybody with any knowledge of economics or finance at all knows that it's potentially a hot potato where there are trillions and trillions, tens of trillions of dollars outside the US, but foreigners don't have to use dollars. It's just convenient. So I wouldn't hold a lot of dollars. At some point, when other foreigners won't accept them, there's only one place all those tens of trillions of dollars will go: back to the US to buy businesses, to buy stocks, to buy real estate. It'll create catastrophic in price rises in the US. It's a catastrophe. I mean, we've had a free ride for 40 years exporting mainly dollars, and that chicken's going to come home to roost. But as far as what's going to happen with the new BRICS currency, which you indicated, I don't think it's going to work. And the reason I don't think it's going to work is because there's absolutely no reason why the Russians and the Brazilians and the Chinese and the Indians and the South Africans and all the rest of them have to trust each other. I mean, and 40% gold, where's that gold going to be held? The only way to solve this problem is simply to use gold as money, and not 40% backing, 100%, because you use gold, period. And in fact, let me go further. It's that money should not have anything to do with government. It's because government, as a coercive institution, will inevitably corrupt the money system. Uh, Gold should be money, 100%. Gold coins should circulate, and you should save the gold coins. I mean, sure, you can get a piece of paper from a bank that you trust because it's perhaps more convenient than a gold coin, physical gold coin. But you have to trust the bank. And the whole morality of the society, and certainly of the banks, has become so corrupt that I don't think they should be trusted with a whole lot. But look, this is the space patrol. It ain't going to happen. Well, it's going to happen when the current system collapses totally. And then there's no alternative but to use gold coins and silver coins for other purposes. But answer to the question, yeah, it's wonderful they're moving into this direction. It's wonderful they're talking about gold, but it's not going to work. Just like the euro, which has lasted much longer than I thought it would or it should have, is going to dry up and blow away because it's backed by nothing. It's you can say the dollar is an I owe you nothing, but the euro is a who owes you nothing. I mean, it's backed by nothing but confidence, which is the worst thing to back something by. So this is going to be really interesting over the next 5 years to see how this all sorts out, because the world is on the edge of a real reset, to use that criminal Klaus Schwab's word, financially, economically, monetarily, militarily, politically, socially, demographically. I mean, I don't think there's ever been anything quite like this. I mean, sure, World War II, really bad, affected all those things. This is going to be worse. I just hope they don't use nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and you're seeing it play out in the gold price. It's like we're making new all-time highs on a daily basis now. We're flirting with an all-time high right now at 27.50, just about $20 off the last all-time high. What do you see going on there with the gold price as well as the silver price? Silver is not quite at an all-time high, but it is at a 12-year high. So how do you see things playing out for the precious metals?
Well, I've always been a gold bull, a gold bug, not always a gold bull. Since I got out of college, and I didn't have any money at all. But back then, gold was $42 an ounce. And I was buying gold back then. And I've never sold a single ounce. So I've got quite a bit accumulated over the years. And I continue to accumulate it because the gold market is likely at this point to go hyperbolic, way above where it should. And what it should be, of course, is a different question we can come up with. We can crunch various numbers as to where the price of gold should be and why it's going to go where it's going, blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is crystal ball gazing. Answer the question, yeah, I'm bullish. I'm plenty bullish on gold still. Wait a minute, maybe I didn't answer the question. Do you remember what the question was?
No, just your broad outlook on precious metals.
Bullish, and especially for silver, because silver is a much, much smaller market in all ways than gold is. And there's no significant inventories of silver. All the gold that's ever been mined, essentially, is in a vault someplace or in jewelry someplace. It's accessible. It's not true with silver. Silver is mainly an industrial metal. And there's not a huge hoard of silver anywhere the way there is of gold. So it tends, because it's a much smaller market, and there's no inventories, it tends to be extremely volatile when people get scared, and they will get scared. And if silver were to return to its previous all-time high, which was about $50 an ounce back in, well, it's hit $50 a couple times. Anyway, it would have to go well over 200. And gold at 2,700, previous all-time high was back in, what year was that? God, It was $800 an ounce is what it hit back in 1979, 1980. Since then, the general price level is about quadrupled, maybe quintupled. It depends on whose numbers you want to trust. I don't trust the CPI much, but so in real terms, silver is a better value. It's much more volatile. I think if you want to speculate, silver is a way to go.
Gotcha. And then finally, what's your view on the markets right now? They're just continuing to rip on higher despite everything that's going on. What do you make of the current market movement?
Well, it's an old adage in the market that money makes the merry run. And with the US government running approximately a $2 trillion per year deficit, most of that is being sold to the Federal Reserve. And when the Federal Reserve buys US government debt, and it's the main buyer now, the Chinese and the Japanese, they're not buying it. They're trying to get rid of what they have. And the public isn't buying a lot of it. So the Fed buys it. But what happens then? The US government sells that money, sells that debt to the Fed. The Fed credits US government accounts at commercial banks, Citibank, Chase Manhattan, whatever, with Federal Reserve notes that the US government can then dispense. But that's not all that's not where it ends, because that money is then in the banking system. And banks can, with the fractional reserve system, fractional reserve is a disaster. There should be no fractional reserve. And this is a whole different conversation, can lend several times that amount of money to businesses, mortgages, car loans, whatever. So what I'm leading to is these government deficits result in a huge increase in the amount of currency in circulation, currency and debt in circulation. So what are people going to do? Smart financial people. Well, they don't want to own bonds. They don't want to own paper. They're buying the shares of big corporations. And with all that money in circulation, earnings of these corporations are still going up. Now, it's not going to go on because for other reasons, there's so much debt in society. People are going to have to stop consuming and go into reverse on that. But the answer to the question, it's money printing is the answer.
Gotcha. All right, Doug. Well, I think we covered.
I don't know if I've been clear with that.
No.
Brief, thumbnail of how it works.
No, I mean that's what's happened before in history. So it's not that far fetched of a forecast.
But to answer the question, what am I doing? I own a couple of conventional U.S. stocks. Okay, but not much. It's insignificant to my portfolio. I'm mainly speculating, and that's the correct word, incidentally, not investing, in mining stocks and other resource stocks because they're very, very underpriced relative to gold, silver, uranium, copper, oil, this type of thing. Very, very underpriced. And I think that the worm will turn. And as those markets have done, because they're very small and very volatile, like silver is, for instance, they could go 10 to 1 over the next few years, and I'll make a lot of money. What I'm going to do with it is a more philosophical question. But
and when you couple that with a subdued oil price, I mean, we just mentioned that oil is down about 4% today. I mean, doesn't this increase the margins of these mining companies as well? Isn't that extra jet fuel? No pun intended.
Yeah, it helps. I mean, mining is a horrible 19th century choo-choo train business. It's a really stupid business from every point of view. That's why you can't invest in mines, really. You can only speculate on them. But yes, oil energy, that is to say, is the largest single cost of the mining business. Probably even depends on the mine, but even more than labor. So yeah, that helps a lot. But there's a good chance that oil is going to explode upwards because
Mm.
uh, with what's going on now in the Middle East, it's entirely possible that the Straits of Hormuz will be closed off. And all of that Middle Eastern oil is not going anywhere, quite frankly, among other problems. So,
Where does that take the price of oil in that case?
well, the world runs on oil, and people will pay whatever they have to get what there is. Oil could go to a couple hundred easy, easy. And will if the Straits of Hormuz are closed off, uh, is Western European militaries and the U.S. military going to be able to solve that problem? Well, yeah, probably, but not easily and not permanently. So, yeah, oil's going higher. I like natural gas actually more than oil for a lot of reasons. And it's been holding up pretty well. It got down to as low as $2 per MCF, and it's up to 3 now. But it could go a lot higher. It's still very, very cheap relative to oil. So, yeah, I'm a bull on energy. I don't care that oil dropped a few percent in a day or drops a few more percent. And of course, we all know that was 3 years ago that oil actually went to negative numbers, which you'd think would be metaphysically impossible. But no, it's not. A lot of commodities from time to time, rarely, but from time to time, go to negative numbers. It's happened to hogs. How can a hog be worth less than zero?
Yeah,
So
I'll pay you to take it off my hands.
Yeah, and sincerely. So, look, anything can happen in the markets, especially when we're in a kind of chaotic world we are today. And if Kamala is elected, I think there's a good chance she'll be installed because of cheating, the two things that I mentioned earlier. And she's really stupid. By that, I mean she's actually low IQ, poorly educated, and the education she has is all in backward concepts, bizarre world concepts. I wouldn't doubt that prices rise a little bit more if she'll put on wage and price controls, things like that.
Is a Trump win bearish for commodities?
Yeah, it is. Because he will do some things, deregulate, which will improve the economy and increase consumption. And he will, if he deregulates, make it more possible to actually drill for oil and explore and produce minerals. Yeah. Yeah, he would be mildly bearish for commodities relative to Kamala. But the thing is that it is so hard to put a mine into production in North America that there's a deficit building up not in gold particularly. That's a special situation because it's money itself, but in uranium and copper and nickel and all these things. And unfortunately, partially because of all the regulation and all kinds of nonsense, it takes a decade from the time you maybe find a mine or get a sniff of it, a decade, 15 years, something like that, to actually start producing something. So it's a long, long lead time. Yeah, I'm bullish on commodities. But I think Kamala is going to win, which is going to supercharge commodity prices, I think. I hope I'm wrong, incidentally.
Yeah. Well, I think we're coming up on time, Doug. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Yeah, rig for stormy weather. And if anybody's enjoyed listening to this miscellaneous recantation of opinions, they can subscribe to my website or my YouTube page. Those are often entertaining.
Doug Casey's Take. We'll have the link down below.
Okay, and internationalman.com, we have 5 new and usually very good articles every week by myself and 4 other people. So, yeah, you can do that. It's I'm sorry that at this point in the market, anything that I say or write, and that's true of my friends too, it all amounts to doom porn because I think things are going to be really grisly in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, it's not pessimism; it's realism. There's a time and place for everything, and we are in the tail end of a 250-year cycle.
Yeah, that's right.
Evolutionary cycle, war cycle, fourth turning cycle. I mean, they all appear to be converging at the exact same time. You do have the various wars going on geopolitically. You have resource scarcity. You have AI wars happening now that are going to deplete a lot of resources. You have the abundance of communication now. You can't tell what's real or what's fake anymore. So you have all of these things happening at the exact same time, and it's a highly complex, unpredictable scenario.
Yep, well said, Danny. So, but I always look at the bright side, and the bright side is it's going to be really interesting to watch it from my widescreen here in Argentina or Uruguay, as opposed to out my front window in the U.S.
I'll have front row tickets here in America.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd want one of those.
All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on, Doug, and thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you're getting value out of these videos. Also, check out our Substack to support us even more. Link to that is down below. You get the chance to ask questions to my guests and recommend me guests in the future, as well as uncensored, ad-free versions of these videos and interviews. And with all that said, I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.